Welcome back to the Versatile PC channel again. We're back with the 9060 XT review today. This is the Powercolor Hellhound 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. There is a 16 and an 8 gigabyte variant. We do not recommend buying the 8 gigabyte variant, only buy the 16 gigabyte variant. MSRP listed at $350 for the 16 gigabytes variant. However, they're mostly around closer to $400 US as of time of launch day. Most of them have sold out. Our local Micro Center had quite a few still left in stock, but on Newegg and Amazon, they seem to be mostly sold through. Of the 16 gigabyte variant, 8 gigabyte variant was still kind of available at the time of filming this video. Let's jump into the bench, or let's talk about more specs. This particular card, so 16 gigabytes GDDR6, PCIe 5.0 x 16. Another downfall kind of to these 9060 XTs is only two display ports and one HDMI port. So if you're trying to run 4 monitors, you cannot do that with this card. You have to only run 3 monitors. This particular monitor this particular graphics card has a OC BIOS and a silent BIOS, a dual BIOS card, and it has a LED switch instead of RGB. It has LED that kind of lights up this back plate where the light of the Hellhound is. And I think that's a little bit of side lighting too, I believe. But overall, that's basically all this card really is. There's nothing special. Triple fan model. A couple other models we've seen out there were a couple of like the Reaper model, and a couple other models that were dual fan cards that were a little bit cheaper than the triple fan models. However, triple fan models I believe look better. So yeah. Before we waste any more time, let's just jump into our benchmarks. In Warzone at 1440p, the 9060 XT averaged 119.3 average FPS, which is 15.9% faster than the 5060. The V580 averaged 63.2 FPS, which is 61.5% slower than the 9060 XT. The 9060 XT and the 5070 here. The 9060 XT actually outperforms the 5070 in Warzone at 1440p, which you see that often in a lot of the Call of Duty titles are AMD preferenced or prefer AMD Radeon cards. So 9060 XT renders 119.3 average FPS with the 5070 at 110.8 average FPS. In Warzone at 1080p, the 9060 XT averaged 171 average FPS. The 5060 139.1 average FPS, which is 20% slower than 9060. The B580 does 88.8% or 88.8 average FPS, which is 63.5% slower than 9060, and the 5070 does 156.8, which is 8.9% slower than the 9060 XT. Forza Horizon 5 at 1440p, the 9060 XT at high settings is able to do 231.9 average FPS, the 5060 at 212.3 average FPS, which is 8.8% slower. The B580 does 141.8 average FPS, which is 48% slower than the 9060 XT. And the 5070, this is where it starts to become faster. At 305.7 average FPS, it is 27.5% faster. Now, our opinion that the price points of $350 and $550 for the 5070, the 9060 XT being only $350 for 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the 5070 being at $550, it almost becomes more of a value proposition that the 9060 XT does offer. But there's also still the 9070, which we have not talked about, but it still also offers a good value at $550. But then you look at the 9070 XT, which if it was MSRP at $600, it would be more compelling. But on average, it's been like $900, $700 or so. It's been $700 or so, so it's definitely a different value proposition. So let's go Forza Horizon 5. 1080p, we have the 9060 XT rendering at 281.2 average FPS, the 5060 at 247.2 average FPS, which is 12.9% slower. The B580 is 172.7 average FPS, which is 47.8% slower. The 5070 at 358.9, which is 24.3% faster. The 96, and then let's go with Plague Tale Requiem at 1440p. We have 9060 XT at 61.5 average FPS, Again, all these things are at high settings, not ultra, not advanced or anything like that. No ray tracing, no upscaling. All of our results are at high settings, which is where we typically recommend playing a lot of these games. For most gamers. So playing at 1440p at 9060 XT does 61.5 average FPS. 5060 does 52.1, which is 16.5% slower. The 50 the B580 does 35.1, which is 54.7% slower. The 5070 does 83.7, which is 30.6% faster. Playing at 1080p, the 9060 XT does 85.3 average FPS. The 5060 does 73, which is 15.5% slower. The B580 at 1080p does 44.8 average FPS, which is 62.3% slower than the 9060 XT. The 5070 does 115.7 average FPS and is 39.2% faster than the 9060 XT. And Doom, the Railguard, at 1440p, the 9060 does 76 average FPS, the 5060 does 65.4, which is 14.9% slower. The B580 does 57.1, which is 28.4% slower, and the 5070 does 98.5, which is 25.8% faster. At 1080p in Doom, the 9060 XT does 108.5 average FPS, the 5060 does 93.1, which is 15% slower. The B580 does 78.8, which is 20.6% slower. The 5070 does 127.9, which is 16.7% faster. In War Thunder, the built-in benchmark of the Battle for the Bridge, at high settings, the 9060 XT does a 205.6 average FPS. The 5060 is 202.4 at 1.6% slower. The B580 does 170.4, which is 18.7% slower, and the 5070 does 314.1, which is 41.1% faster. War Thunder at 1080p, the 9060 XT does 294.5 average FPS. The 5060 does 244.3 average FPS, which is 18.6% slower. The B580 does 234.2 average FPS, which is 22.8% slower, and the 5070 does 395.4, which is 29.3% faster. Black Bit Wukong at the built-in benchmark high settings, no ray tracing, no upscaling. 9060 XT does 130 average FPS. The 5060 at 117 average FPS is 10.5% slower. The B580, 67 average FPS, 64% slower, I think that is. 5070 is 162 average FPS at 21.9% faster. Black Wukong at 1080p built-in benchmark. 9060 XT renders 137 average FPS. The 5060 does 124 average FPS at 10% slower. The B580 does 72, which is 62.7% slower. The 5070 is 171, which is 22% faster than the 9060 XT. And Black Ops 6, 1440p, their built-in benchmark. 9060 XT averages 84%, or 84 average FPS. The 5060 averages 72 average FPS, which is 15.4% slower. The B580 does 45, which is 60.5% slower. The 5070 does 79 average FPS, which is 6.1% slower. In Black Ops 6 1080p, the built-in benchmark, high settings, no ray tracing, no upscaling. 9060 XT does 122 average FPS. The 5060 does 99 average FPS, which is 20.8% slower. The B580 does 66 average FPS, which is 54.6% slower, and the 5070 at 111 average FPS does 9. If we're all going by averages, so the 5060 on average is 24.7% slower in our testing. The B580 is 44.4% slower in our testing, and the 5070 is 18.8% faster on average in our testing. For the value proposition, so the 9070 costs 15.4% more at MSRP than the 5060 at MSRP. It costs 33.3% more than the B580 at comparative MSRPs, and the 5070 is 44% more expensive than the 9060 XT at comparable MSRPs. So, but again, the MSRP value and everything else kind of we'll have to see after a few days what the 9060 XT ends up kind of settling around, and where the 5060 kind of just sits on the shelves at even the MSRP. So we'll see where the value proposition kind of stays in the future. Looking at a couple other reviews, Tech Power Up review, they found that the 9060 and the 5060 is the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte variant, which we do not currently have. We do buy all of our graphics cards, and I cannot justify spending that much money on a graphics card that I only test one time. So we kind of just do which ones we can. So I would love to get a 16 gigabyte variant of the 5060 Ti, but I do not currently have one. So at their testing, they found that this 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte is 7% faster than the 9060 XT. They found that the 5060 is 22% slower than the 9060 XT. The B580 is 22% slower as well than the 9060 XT, and the 5070 is 51% faster than the 9060 XT in their testing. Looking at the hardware unbox review of the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte variant, they did release a 8 gigabyte variant where it shows that the VRAM of the 8 gigabyte variant is very broken and it's not worth buying the 8 gigabyte variant. Only buy the 16 gigabyte variant, which is an opinion we highly agree with and highly recommend. Just buying the 16 gigabyte variant. 8 gigabyte variant should not exist. We agree with that as well. So they found at 1440p the 9060 XT is on average 1.4% slower than the 5060 Ti. It is 24% faster than the 5060. The B580 they found that is 27.6% slower than the 9060 XT, and they found that the 5070 is 32.43% faster than the 9060 XT. At 1080p, they found that the 9060 XT is 5.9% slower than the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte. The 5060 is 10.7% slower than the 9060 XT. The B580 is on average 32% slower than the 9060 XT at 1080p, and the 5070 is 27.3% faster than the 9060 XT at 1080p. So basically our conclusion, we have two things to say. The 8 gigabyte variant, not worth buying. Don't even think about it. Don't buy it. If you're looking at a budget card in 2025, quotation marks around the budget, because $350 is not realistically a budget card, even though it is the lowest tier entry level of AMD, and it is basically $50 more than the entry level of NVIDIA. It's still a very expensive graphics card. Even the 5060, which we don't recommend buying anyway, is also too expensive at $300 USD. And the B580 is still in a range of, it's $250, realistically $300. It's kind of becoming at the point where it's not worth buying either from the standpoint of price to performance versus the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte variant. The 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte is also not worth buying. So for the budget gamers right now, even in the current graphics card market, even with the new, all the new cards coming out, and even the used market being inflated because of the new cards, it's a very tough time to be a budget gamer. The 9060 XT does offer pretty decent value if you can get it for the MSRP of $350 US. If you cannot, then I would just wait and ride out the cards you currently have. So yeah, for that, I would say it's definitely a decent card. This one, the 9060 XT, definitely a decent budget. It's definitely a decent option for entry level, high end gaming. However, being that the 8 gigabyte variant does exist, it's kind of a bad card, because it shares the same name. Now, if they change the 9060 XT 8 gigabyte to a 9060 and just left it like that, then I would be, okay, the 9060 XT is good, the 9060 XT, or the 9060 sucks. But, however, this thing's 50-50. It kind of sucks. It also has a decent option, So that's kind of our thing. So don't buy the 8 gigabyte variant. Buy the 16 gigabyte variant if you are actually going to buy the 9060 XT. And that's pretty much it. See y'all in the next one. Peace.